Welcome, team. This is a combo slant. It is a pivot table with slices. You select whatever major capability you want. The major capability, the lint family, those could be named whatever you want to name it. To update it, we get a GCSS Army file. This one has everything FMC. Control Tango makes it a table. Then we're going to F12, save it, and we're going to override the old equipsit that's in the queries files. We're going to override this one. Don't change the name. Don't change anything else. Just override it. We're going to close this, and we're going to refresh the query. Refresh all. And once you refresh it, everything changes back to FMC because everything in that table is FMC. Now we're going to go back and get another equipsit from another date. We're going to hit Control T, make it into a table, F12, and then override again the queries file equipsit. Once we save and close this one, we're going to refresh the pivot table. Right click, refresh, and then once it refreshes, it changes everything to read the new information from the new data file. That is the only thing that needs to happen to be updated. This is an additional table that also feeds from the updated equipsit. We're going to go back. We're going to open up the one that's FMC again. We're going to again save it into. We're going to override the equipsit file that is in the queries folder. Again, we're going to close it. And this time, once we close it and open it, we're going to refresh the table. Right click on the table and refresh. It'll read the files. The elapsed time is about a minute. I shortened it because it's just a minute wasted, but the elapsed time for the refresh is about a minute, less than a minute. And now you have a table that you could use and change to however you want, or you have a pivot table as a report. Let's go back to the beginning so we could set up the whole queries and the reports. You don't have to do this. This is just if you're interested in knowing how it's done. We could start from here, an empty sheet. We go and import the queries from the folder where we selected it. We're going to import it and then select the table. After that, we're going to transform data or edit data. 2016 says edit data. This is the query. This is where all the magic happens. The next thing we're going to do is going to clean the data. Make sure that there are no duplicate values where there shouldn't be, and that there are no empty cells. There shouldn't be any duplicate values in what is going to be used as the key, which will be the equipment, and the storage location should be no empties, and the UIC should be no empties. But the equipment, there should be any duplicates. There should only be one equipment for everything. And then we're going to change the type for the storage location, material, and the UIC. Those are the only ones that we need to change the type for now. This is so that they match once we combine these files with the units and with the type of equipment that it is. This is coming up in a few seconds. Here you go, we're going to change the type for both of those. And all this does is makes the query read it as a text. Now we're going to change the name to equipment so we could easily identify later on. Now some of these changes are not that important, but as the queries grow in complexity, which is the point, it is very important for these items to be done the way it is. Now we're importing the unit ID and the fleet list. We're going to select multiple, and then we're going to select the fleet list and the unit's ID. From the unit ID, we'll find out what unit the UICs belong to. And from the fleet list, we are going to see what type of an equipment is. If it's major capability, it's Slant family, all of these things that we would choose for our particular units. So we just imported the unit ID and the fleet list. We are now going to merge the unit ID query so that we are able to identify what unit each UIC belongs to. Again, these are not real units. I just made these names up. So we're going to select unit identification from the equipset and unit identification code from the unit ID. This is why it was important to change the text on both of them to text. From here, then we're going to expand the unit by battalion and the company, and make sure that you unselect this so it doesn't add an extra naming convention to it. And once we do that, we hit OK, and then the battalion and the company is going to be added, as you can see right here. We are going to move to the fleet list so that we could change the type of the material number. And here it's called an in. We're going to change this to text so that when we make the query, both of them match. It's very important that we do this. And then we're going to bring in the major capability, Lint family, and any other one that we choose. We're going to, again, merge queries. We're going to choose from here the fleet list. And on top, we're going to find the material number. We're going to select a column, material number. And at the bottom, we're going to get the nin. It doesn't matter what you call it. What's important is that the information inside it matches. And it tells us that it's 93,000 matches. And from here, we're going to expand. Again, we're going to select everything. And then we're going to choose the columns that we are going to be using. And again, these could be named whatever you want to name it. This is just an example. Now we've merged here the major capability, Lint family, and Lint subfamily. If you look at the apply steps, these are some of the changes that I made in the prior query. I haven't shown them because this is not the focus of this presentation. Later on, I will show more presentations where I will explain more. Right now, I'm taking the remove duplicates that I added earlier, and I'm moving it down towards the bottom. Now we have the battalion, the company, the fleet, what it is, and no duplicates. Now it is time for us to combine all these fields together so that we could start creating our combat slant. We are now going to group the battalion, the company, major capability, Lint family, model number, model description, and then we're going to go to transform, and we're going to group them together. And also the operational status. This is going to combine everything into similar groups. So the battalion, the company, and everything else, NMC status, NMCS, NMCM, FMC, they're all going to be grouped into one. And it's going to give us the count of how many there are within that field. Next step is going to be to pivot the operational status. We're going to select the operational status, pivot, and it's going to be, the count is going to give us the value. Once we do this, we're going to have FMC, NMCS, NMCM, and how many there are within each column. We're going to select now all these fields, and we're going to get rid of those nulls and make them zeros, because later on when we start adding and dividing, it might give us some issues. We're going to select everything, right click, replace value, type null in small cap, and then replace it with a 0. So now everything is going to have a value. So we are not going to get an error when we divide emptiness by something. We're now going to change these 3 fields also into whole numbers. So now they're decimals, they're whole numbers. Later on, this helps later on. You might not see the benefit now, but later on, once the reports become more complicated, it's good to have whole numbers instead of decimal numbers. Now we're going to add a column. We're going to add the on-hand column. So we're going to add all of these 3 columns into one, and this is going to give us the on-hand quantity. We'll rename it on-hand. Now that we have the on-hand column, it's time to get the NMC column. So we're going to add the NMCS and the NMCM, and this is going to give us the NMC column. This is for the reporting. Once you do the pivot table for the report, we're gonna know what's on hand, what's FMC, and what's NMC. For the OR readiness percentage, this is like a mid-level step. We're going to add a function. First, we're going to create a blank query, and within this query, we're going to create a function. We're going to call the query OR. We are then going to go into the View, Advanced Editor, and here we're going to write out a function. Don't worry about this function. Google it, find out what it's for. This is how I learned how to do these things, by just seeing things and then trying to figure out what they meant, how to do them. We're going to need the FMC, and we're going to need the on hand. And the next thing, this symbol, the equals, and this is going to make it into a function. And then we're going to take the FMC, divide it by on hand, and at the end, we need to return the OR. Like I said, this is a mid-level function that you will learn later on if you choose to. Now that we created the function, we got to go back to the equipsit, and we need to add a column that's going to include the functions we're going to add, and we're going to invoke the custom function we created, select it from here, and in the FMC field, we're going to choose FMC, and in the column, we're going to make this into a column, make it a column name. We're going to go, and we're going to go and choose the on hand. Trust me, I chose, there you go, I'm going to move it up, and then down here is the FMC. And this one right here at the bottom is the on hand. We hit OK. And now this made the calculation into our percentage. Now we got to take this column and we got to make it into a percentage. Change the type and turn it to a percentage. This is important once you do the pivot table, because the pivot table is going to recognize that what this is. If we make it a whole number, it'll be a whole number. If we make it a text, it'll read it as text. So we got to make sure that we change it into a percentage. Now now we have all the fields that we needed. The battalion, the company, the description of the object, the model number, the major capability, Lin family, Lin Star family, how many NMCS, how many NMCM, how many FMC, how many on hand. So each time that you refresh the query from Excel, all these steps are going to be done, and it's going to give you the numbers that you need. All I'm doing now is I'm rearranging it so that when we make this into a table, it is in the same order. For the pivot table report, it doesn't matter because you choose how you want it from the pivot table, but from the table itself, you are only going to see the way it is laid out over here. So here you lay it out the way you want to see it. That way, once you save it and refresh it, it'll give you the display that you want to see. Now that we have it the way we want to display it, we're going to load this to Excel. Close and load. Always choose this one. Always select close and load. That way you have the choice of what you want to do with it. On the right is the way it looks in Excel 2016. We're going to select only create connection and hit OK. And this is going to only create a connection. This is what we need at first. And then we're going to choose the ones we're going to look at. We're going to right click on here, load. We're going to load the table and load to the data model so that we could use it in a pivot table later on. We hit OK. And this is going to load the table the way that it was displayed in the Power Query editor. We're going to go design the table. And from here forward, it is up to you how you want this to look. You got the slicers. You could make any modifications you want, any formatting that you want. And each time you refresh this, it'll take the newest file that you have uploaded in the queries file and provide you with the most current information. And that's all that you have to do from GCSS Army. Download it, save it in that folder, override the old one, and then come back in here and run the query, refresh the queries, and you're going to get brand new information. This is a table, and later on, I'm going to open up a pivot table so that we could generate a report. Now, with the table that you downloaded, it's up to you to do whatever you want to do with it. If you want to learn how to do these things, just Google it. There's plenty of resources out there that will help you play with this so it looks the way that you want it to look, and so you could display whatever things you want to display. Every single step is easy to do. The hardest thing is putting it all together so it looks a certain way, but that's up to you to spend time. Here we put in the pivot table. We just put in the fields that we're going to be using in the pivot table. Changing the formats. And again, once you download the files from GArmy and save them in the query, all you have to do is refresh, and all this information is going to be up to date. And later in the later ones I'll be doing, I'm gonna show you how to do a trend where every day that you download this, it'll record the previous day, and so on and so forth. So you could see the difference between two different dates. You could put a yesterday's date or last month's date, and it'll give you the trend difference between the two dates. But the first thing we got to start is how to set this up on your computer so that you are able to update the files. And once we have that, that is 90% of the problems. Because I could generate a query that will display any information that you want to look at. And if you know how to put it in your computer and make minor changes, I could just give it to you and you could just go with it. And then we will learn the capabilities of what we could do with queries, and we could make better reports. And also, these queries, once you have them, you could copy them straight into Power BI. And with Power BI, you could display them in many different ways. So it's good to work with Excel queries for day-to-day operations, so you could see reports, and we could generate easy to follow, easy to read reports that could be seen daily or weekly, for service schedules, for man-hour reporting, for direct labor. And all we have to do is go to GArmy, download the files, save them, make them into tables, and override the old ones, and hit refresh. And Power Query will do the rest. There are no formulas to break. There are no formulas to break or to update. All we're going to do is this, just save the file into and override the old one. And as you can see, it updates it real quick. I did not show the key. The key is the key, because in the key is where you have what the UIC belongs to and what the equipment is. And if you have a unit that is not in the UIC, if you have a unit that you have not identified, it is not going to know what unit it is, but it will still display the UIC. Thank you for your time. Hope this works for you, and stay in touch.